A lot of buyers tell me they want to live in Castle Rock. That part's usually easy. The harder question is where in Castle Rock they're actually going to be happiest. Because Castle Rock doesn't feel like one single place once you start looking seriously. You can drive 10 minutes and wind up with a completely different experience. Same town, different rhythm, similar price points in some cases, but it's a very different way of living once you move in. Two different areas that buyers compare all the time are downtown Castle Rock and the Meadows. At first glance, they can seem close enough to put in the same conversation. You still have access to many of the same larger conveniences, but depending on the home, the price range may overlap. But 6 months after moving in, the things people love or wish that they had thought through more are usually very different. So today I want to walk you through what it feels like to live in downtown Castle Rock versus a neighborhood like the Meadows. Not which one just looks better online or where you can get more square footage. I want to talk about how your days are actually going to work. What you feel after the move, and what version of Castle Rock actually fits your life. Because the biggest mistake buyers make is thinking that they're choosing between two areas. They're usually choosing between two routines. Downtown Castle Rock and the Meadows do not compete in ways the same that some people think they do. Downtown Castle Rock is less of a traditional neighborhood and more of a downtown environment and vibe. You're choosing proximity to activity. All the restaurants, the coffee shops, the events, Main Street and Festival Park, and the kind of local energy that gives you more reasons to leave the house without turning every outing into a plan. The Meadows, on the other hand, feels more like a neighborhood ecosystem. You're choosing the residential comfort, trails, parks, newer homes, newer surroundings, and a lifestyle that feels like, well, being home and moving through the community itself. One gives you more connection to the center of town. The other, it gives you more neighborhood structure. Neither one is automatically better, but they solve different problems. That's why only comparing bedrooms, square footage, finishes, it can send you in the wrong direction. The house does matter, so don't get me wrong, but in this comparison, the real question is how you want your normal week to feel. Let's start with the downtown Castle Rock area because this one surprises a lot of people. When buyers hear downtown living, they sometimes picture things a little busier or more urban than it really is. Let's be clear, Castle Rock is not downtown Denver. It still has a suburban and even a small town Colorado feel. Your high-rise lifestyle is not 20 stories. It's probably closer to 5 or 6, and you're definitely not getting the density that people associate with major city centers. What's going to change is the access. Living closer to downtown Castle Rock changes how often you're going to use the town and its amenities. Instead of making everything feel like a drive or a plan, certain parts of your life become more spontaneous. Coffee's easier, dinner's easier, and the local events, well, they're accessible. A quick walk around town becomes actually something that you actually do, instead of something you mention when explaining why you like the area. That sounds small, but it changes habits. If you're near downtown Castle Rock, you might find yourself using places like the historic B&B Cafe, Wild Blue Yonder Brewing, Festival Park, and Main Street, more often because they feel like part of your normal life. The area has character, and that character tends to pull people out of their homes because it's walkable. For some buyers, that is exactly the appeal. They want to feel connected. They love the idea of being close to restaurants and amenities, local businesses, events, and activity. A little bit more movement around them, it feels good. There's comfort in knowing that if they want to do something at 6 p.m., it doesn't have to turn into a whole production. Now, here's the trade-off. Homes near downtown can vary a lot more. You may see older properties, definitely different lot sizes, and definitely less predictable layouts, and homes that aren't always as polished or as uniform as a new home community. Some places are going to have charm, but less storage. Others are going to have location, but certainly less privacy. A house might be close to everything, but the layout might not feel as modern as what you might find somewhere else. Certain buyers love that. They love character. They are willing to accept a less predictable home because the location gives them something they value even more. Another buyer might walk through the same home and area and realize they may not want charm as much as they thought. What they actually are looking for is a more organized neighborhood feeling. Newer layouts, a little more consistency. That moment is important because why? It saves people from making the wrong decision. Downtown Castle Rock works best when you actually value the location enough to accept the trade-offs that come with it. If you only like the idea of downtown, but still expect that home to feel newer, you might start running into some tension pretty quickly. Now, contrast that, let's look at the Meadows. This is a completely different conversation. This is an area where people stop describing one single feature and start describing their routine. They talk about walking more. They talk about the trails, parks, and pools. open spaces and community layouts, and how easy it is to feel like they spend time close to home. That should tell you something. The appeal isn't just one restaurant or event, it's the way that the area is organized around your daily life. There are trails and open spaces running throughout the community. Parks are definitely built into the environment. Schools, open spaces, and neighborhood amenities. And residential streets also always create a more contained lifestyle. For many buyers, that's going to be a calming, a sense of place. The Meadows also tends to offer more home styles many of the relocation buyers coming to Colorado often expect. When they picture a newer Colorado suburb, more open layouts, modern floor plans, homes that are often feel designed around current living patterns, rather than the older floor plans that require more compromise. From people coming from older, denser, more expensive markets, that can feel pretty refreshing. You may walk into a home in the Meadows and feel like daily life's going to be easier. More functional space, better storage, and the layout just makes sense. A neighborhood that actually feels planned rather than pieced together over time. That is the strength of the area. However, the Meadows has its trade-offs too. You're probably not going to walk to dinner the same way you might living in downtown Castle Rock. Going out's going to require a little bit more attention. The neighborhood's going to feel comfortable and complete, but the connection to the central atmosphere and vibe of Castle Rock is definitely different. You might even spend more time close to home, which is great if that's what you want. But if you crave more spontaneous access to restaurants and the events and local activities around town, the Meadows might be a little bit quieter than you expect. That's where buyers sometimes will pause. They tour the homes, they love the layout, they appreciate the open spaces, but then they may realize that I need a little more energy around me. Again, that doesn't make the Meadows wrong. It just means that the area solves a different problem. Now, let's compare how it's going to play out during a normal week. Picture a Tuesday. If you live near downtown Castle Rock, the day may feel more connected to itself, closer. You finish work, think about dinner, and running down, going somewhere nearby doesn't feel like a big decision. In fact, maybe you can just walk to dinner, or you go meet someone for coffee. Maybe you stop by an event going on in one of the local parks, or grab a casual meal without even having to think about it. The key here is the location encourages small moments of activity. Over time, that changes how you use Castle Rock. You're not just living in the town, you're participating in it more often. Now, picture that same Tuesday in the Meadows. Your evening likely feels more centered around your home. You might walk over to the trails, you run over to the park, or you just flat stay within the neighborhood because it already gives you enough of what you need. The appeal isn't that you're right next to the center of town. It's that your immediate surroundings feel comfortable, planned, and easy to live in. Instead of pulling you outward, the Meadows often makes staying close feel more natural. And that difference matters. One area and lifestyle encourage you to use the town. The other is going to encourage you to use the neighborhood. A buyer who understands that before they move has a much better chance of understanding and using it correctly. Now, let's talk about weekends, because this is where the contrast becomes even more clear. Near downtown, weekends can feel more flexible. You may spend more time around local events, restaurants, the shops, or the activity going on Main Street or in Festival Park. There's a built-in reason to get out, even if you didn't plan much. The Meadows, however, is going to create a different weekend rhythm. You might start it off with a trail walk, you spend some time at home, or move through the community without feeling the need to get out or go to downtown. The neighborhood itself becomes part of the weekend. And a lot of buyers can underestimate that difference. They visit both areas, they show and look at the homes, but then after the move, the habits begin to tell the truth. Someone who thought they wanted quiet might start missing the activity, and another may assume that they want to be near everything, and they might realize they need some quiet and more residential. This is why the decision needs to be more than just a price comparison. Now, let's talk about the homes themselves. Downtown Castle Rock definitely has more variation. That can mean older homes, character, charm, and definitely uniqueness. It'll definitely bring compromise, the older layouts, smaller storage, if any, and more maintenance considerations, different parking situations, and even less predictability from one property to the next. That's not a bad thing. For the right buyer, it's part of the appeal. The Meadows, however, it tends to feel more consistent. Many homes offer layouts that fit more modern expectations easily. The neighborhood design feels and looks intentional. Streets, trails, home styles, they often create a more predictable experience. That predictability, that can be valuable, but it can also feel unique to someone who wants a more strong sense to character. So the question again is not which one is better for their homes. The question is, which trade-off do you want to give up or live in? Do you want more character and proximity to downtown energy, even if the home itself requires more compromise? Or do you want a more planned residential environment, even if that means less access to the immediate downtown area? That question is much more useful than asking which area is better. Now, let's get into the regrets that buyers usually mention after they move in. People rarely call me and say, I wish the kitchen island had been 6 inches bigger. The comments are usually more practical. They wish they had thought about how often they wanted to walk somewhere. They wish they'd have been more honest with themselves about how much more peace and quiet mattered to them. They realized that they either wanted more energy around them or separation from it. Those are going to be the lifestyle regrets, not house regrets. They usually come from focusing more on the property and not on the normal Tuesday. That's why I always come back to the daily routines. Where will you go after work? How often are you going to go downtown? And do you want your neighborhood to feel active or calm? How much does a newer layout matter to you, and do you care? Would you rather have that proximity to local energy or a residential setting? The answers to those questions tell you much more than what photos ever will. Now, if I were helping my best friend choose between downtown Castle Rock and the Meadows, I wouldn't just start sending him listings. I would tell them, let's go spend some time in both areas before we decide. Go downtown in the late afternoon and walk the main street. Grab a coffee, have some dinner. Pay attention to whether you like the activity around you or whether it's feeling a little overwhelming and more than you want. Then go over and spend some time in the Meadows. Drive the area slowly, walk the trails, sit in a park for a few minutes, notice the space. Ask yourself whether the neighborhood feels comfortable or too removed from the energy you're looking for. Definitely do this before you love or fall in love with a house. Because once you fall in love with a house, it definitely becomes harder to be honest about the location. A home can distract you from the lifestyle that you're actually choosing. Here's the simplest way I would frame it. If you want more connection, more spontaneity, and more access to character of Castle Rock, spend some time looking downtown. But if your priority is more residential feel, newer style homes, the trails, the parks, and a neighborhood that makes staying close to home easier, then the Meadows deserve some serious attention and consideration. If you're torn between the two, that's normal. They're both strong options, but they're going to be strong for different reasons. And that's the part I want buyers to understand. At the end of the day, I don't think people just simply choose Castle Rock. They're choosing a version of Castle Rock. Downtown Castle Rock, that gives you one version. The Meadows, it gives you another. One is more connected to the town's center of activity. The other is more rooted in a planned neighborhood lifestyle. Neither one is universally better, but one may be much better for the way you actually want to live. So before you compare another kitchen, another basement, or a backyard, compare your routine. Spend time in both areas, walk them, drive them, and notice what feels natural. Ask yourself, which place already feels like my life? Not which house looks better online. Because the biggest mistake buyers make is not buying the wrong house. It's ending up in the wrong part of town. If you're trying to figure out where Castle Rock actually fits your life, this is the conversation to have before you start chasing homes. And if there's another area in Castle Rock you want to compare next, let me know in the comments. I'll keep breaking down how these places actually live, not just how they look in listings and photos.